Welcome to the Eyes on Ocean podcast. The podcast was created for marine mammals observers to share the incredible experience with whales and dolphins. My name is Claudia Erber, your host, and I invite you to embark and tune in to sea lovers' inspiring stories. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited to have Emma Steele with us, a passionate marine conservationist with incredible journey in marine mammal observation. Originally from Scotland, Emma has dedicated her career to protecting marine life and is deeply motivated by the power of collective action in conservation. We first met earlier this year at the European Cetacean Conference during an engaging workshop, the recreational activities and their impact on cetaceans. And just after a quick chat, I told her about the podcast and she immediately accepted the invitation to take part in this project. I'm so happy she's here with us today, and thank you so much for joining us, Emma, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice 6 months on from ECS to be able to catch up, and I'm really glad to be chatting to you today.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. I would like you to introduce yourself and tell me where you are from and where are you living now.
Yes, so I am from Scotland. I've always lived in Scotland, and actually at the moment I'm based up in Orkney. And Orkney is an archipelago of islands off the northeast coast of mainland Scotland, so quite far north, in a little town called Stromness, an old fishing village. So it's really, really quaint. It can be quite touristy in the summer, but it's right next to the coastline, and it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful place to live.
Yes, you know what? I've been there. I had a project. Yes, in Scotland.
No way, you've been to Orkney?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
It's so beautiful. It was a great time. Well, it was a great time. It was COVID time. So we needed to do 2 weeks of quarantine in a nice place with bungalow. And because it was pure nature, I could walk every day out of the nature, and I was like walking 3 hours per day and enjoying the nature. It's a really special place. And then after doing the project offshore, we saw so many whales, orcas, fin, grampus griseus. It was an amazing project.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
It was
cool.
like June. Well, I had a double time on board, so I usually work 6 weeks. But because I wanted to stay one more trip, so I stay like 3 months at sea. So I have a great time at sea. Okay, but
amazing.
let's talk about you. Tell me about your early days as a marine mammal observer and how your career has changed and grown over time.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in landlocked Stirlingshire, so nowhere near the sea. And then I studied zoology and environmental science at Aberdeen University, and that's a coastal city. So I hadn't really much interest in the sea and marine life. I was much more terrestrial, conservation minded, growing up in the countryside. But then, being based in Aberdeen, there are a population of bottlenose dolphins that like to hang out in the harbour in Aberdeen. And whilst I was at university, I heard about a project which was helping to monitor the population of dolphins. So I started volunteering back in 2016, so like 9 years ago now, and was volunteering to do surveys to record the bottlenose dolphins in the harbour. And these are called Shore Watch surveys. So Shore Watch is a programme run by the charity Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and it's been running since 2007, collecting consistent data. And it's a citizen science project, so volunteers are trained to go out and collect this data around the coast of Scotland. And then following that, I ended up doing a residential volunteering 8 months at the Scottish Dolphin Centre, and that's actually where the Shore Watch programme is based. So I got a bit more involved then. And then, it can be quite difficult to get a job, paid job in conservation. So I kind of did a few other jobs working on a nature reserve and did some policy work down in Edinburgh. And then in 2021, I moved up to Orkney to expand the Shore Watch project into Orkney and Shetland. So at that point, there were only sites on mainland Scotland and the Outer Hebrides. And Orkney and Shetland are really interesting, amazing places to see lots of different species of whales and dolphins. So it was really great to be able to move up to the islands and start setting up sites and training lots of volunteers to go out and do these surveys to record the different species that are seen up here. And it's a really lovely place to live, a lovely place to work. And I'm very lucky that I get to go out and survey around the coastline. And I've recorded, I think I've seen about 14 different species of whales and dolphins around Scotland. Yeah.
That is amazing. Can you tell us some of these species?
Yeah, so in particular times of year, what I find really interesting about some of the sites up in the Northern Isles, Northern Isles is like Orkney and Shetland, we have large aggregations of harbour porpoises at certain times of the year. So usually you'd maybe only see a small group or harbour porpoises on their own. And actually I put the drone up above a group in Orkney, and there were 52 harbour porpoises in one shot in the drone. Together,
wow,
yeah.
That is amazing.
It's really cool.
Once I saw a group of 15 and I thought, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But 52 is great.
Yeah, it's really cool. And also, we have a community of orca. So we've got what's seen as the Northern Isles community. They're seen around Orkney, Shetland, and the north coast of Scotland throughout the year. They're not seen as resident yet, but I think we just don't have the data to back up whether we can say that they're definitely resident to Scotland or not. So it's amazing to see orca, and they come really close to shore. So they hunt seals when they're in Scottish waters, and they're patrolling the coastline really close to shore, looking for seals to hunt. So you could be standing on the shore or at the top of a cliff, and you have an orca passing right below you, which is just incredible.
Yes, they're incredible. And are you doing some kind of photo ID of these orcas to find out if they are resident pod?
Yeah, so there's a catalogue which we're not directly involved with, but there's lots of photographers and conservationists around Scotland who take lots of pictures of orca. And there's a Scottish killer whale photo ID catalogue. So any pictures I take, I kind of send to them, and they can monitor which pod or family group it is that's present, and they're kind of tracking their movements around Scotland. But also some of the orca that we see in Scotland actually come from Iceland, and it's a completely separate group. They're not linked to the Northern Isles community. They are Icelandic, and they are seen in Iceland every year. And then about 30 individuals, I think, have been recorded in Scottish waters, and they come down in kind of May time, and then they head back off at the end of the summer. Back to Iceland.
Cool.
So really cool.
Can we consider them as the transients?
I think so, yeah. It's not, there's a much larger population in Icelandic waters, and it's not all of them that come down to Scotland. It's just 30 confirmed individuals. And it's quite new. We're still learning quite a lot about why that might be, and whether they're potentially changing their diet. So they might be eating fish in Iceland, and then they're seen hunting seals in Scotland. And typically, I think orca are thought to only eat one or the other, but actually there's so much research still to be done on the Icelandic population as well.
Cool. What more?
It's really cool.
What more species?
Risso's dolphins. I love Risso's dolphins. They're fantastic.
They are.
And we see them more so in the kind of late summer, like July, August, September time. And I think that's because they feed on squid, and that tends to be when the squid are apparently a little bit closer to shore. So we'll see them from those kind of coastal vantage points. We don't tend to get pilot whales coastally very often, and when we do see them quite coastally, we can get a little bit worried that they might strand. And actually, this year on Orkney, you might have seen on the news, there was a huge mass stranding of pilot whales on one of our outer islands. I think it was over 70 individuals
I
stranded on a
remember,
very remote beach.
yes.
Yeah, so that was
Did
super
they
sad.
find out what happened, the cause of the stranding?
No, so I
Very
think they're
difficult,
still
huh, to find
still
out.
investigating. Yeah, it can
Mm.
be. The team from there's a group called the Scottish Marine Animal Stranding Scheme. So they are
Mm.
trained, and it's their kind of role to do necropsies and postmortems and try and find out, um, probably trying to find out why they might have died, but also you can find out so much about how they lived their lives as well, where in the ocean that they were feeding, and things like that. So the team from down south came up, to Orkney, and they managed to take samples, and I was there helping, cutting little chunks of blubber and skin and muscle, measuring each individual animal, and they managed to do postmortems on quite a few as well to take samples of
Mm.
all of their organs and things like that. So hopefully we will learn a little bit more about why that happened, and hopefully we can mitigate against it in the future.
Yeah, it's important job. I'm trying to get involved here in Portugal in this kind of project. I like.
It can be quite gory.
Yeah.
Getting the sharpening your knives and cutting into a whale is quite a
The
unique
smell is not
experience.
so good, but you can learn so much about the animals. And
Exactly,
also
and
the
yeah,
teamwork, the action. I've been working with this in Brazil, so I am a kind of missing in one way
yeah.
to touch the animals, even if they're dead.
Yeah, it's very sad, very, very sad when they die, but I think
Yeah,
your brain very quickly switches to, okay, this is dead now. We can learn so much from this dead carcass,
exactly.
which is really interesting.
Cool. And tell me a bit, a special story about your work and how you really protect the animals there in your actual work.
Yeah, so with Shorewatch, I kind of talked a little bit about Shorewatch at the
Mm.
start. So we train volunteers to do surveys around the coastline. It's a long-standing citizen science project. And my favourite kind of anecdote about the Shorewatch project is that this year in April, volunteers had racked up 100,000 surveys, and each individual survey takes 10 minutes. So if we add all of those together, that makes up 1 million minutes of survey effort, which I just think is quite incredible.
It's
An
amazing.
effort, yeah. And through that, kind of gathering all of that data, we're trying to protect whales and dolphins. Obviously, that's kind of what we want to achieve. And we've got some quite good examples of where that has worked in the past. So, Shorewatch data a couple of years ago now, the Northeast Lewis Marine Protected Area was designated specifically for Risso's dolphins, and that's off the Outer Hebrides on the Isle of Lewis. Um, and Shorewatch data was used to kind of evidence that as a really important habitat for Risso's dolphins, that they were present all year round, that they were often seen with calves, they were often seen feeding and things like that. So that's just a really nice tangible example of how the data that volunteers collect can actually be used to prove areas are important habitats for marine mammals.
And how you choose these people to get involved in the survey?
So I'd say most volunteers live kind of locally, like coastally, and that's really great because they can be out
Yeah.
there on a random winter's day that's actually nice and calm. They can be out there collecting data. But essentially, we run quite regular training sessions in all of the regions of Scotland that we operate, to try and encourage more people to train and sign up. So it is a program that volunteers have to come to a training session, and that means that we can verify the data a little bit better. So we know that someone has come and learned about how to identify which species they might be seeing, and how to actually
Mhm.
do this like quite systematic 10-minute shore watch methodology. And then we provide ongoing kind of support. And I will go to all of our sites and get very lucky to be able to actually go out and see our volunteers and support them and make sure people are happy with the kind of methodology and identifying different species. So anyone can get involved if you live in Scotland and you live locally to one of our dedicated shore watch sites. You can get involved in shore watch.
Wow, that is so important. And do you have like the equipment out there, or okay,
Yeah,
they don't need
so
to have their own equipment.
no, we try to keep it as like accessible as possible, as you know, binoculars and things like that can be quite expensive. So how
Yeah.
it works is at each of our survey sites, there's like a kit box, It's usually like a plastic locker with a padlock. And
Mm.
people will just turn up to the site and be able to access the binoculars. We used to have paper data sheets and clip boxes, but we now have quite a bespoke app where volunteers can enter their data online. And yeah, everything that they might need is in that box, so they don't have to bring their own binoculars.
Wow, that is amazing idea. I think it's so important citizen science involvement in marine conservation. I really believe that is the key because we cannot, we experts, be everywhere, and we have so much long coastline everywhere where we have the marine mammals. So it's so important to get people involved and curious, and we know that we will only protect what we know, what we love. So it's
Yeah,
beautiful project.
I completely agree. I think as well, like volunteers are out there collecting data, and that is fantastic in its own right. But a lot of what inspires me a lot about Shorewatch volunteers is a lot of them become ambassadors for their local marine environment, and they're not just out there collecting data, but they might take part in a beach clean, or they might chat to people around the coastline about what is they're doing. They're standing there with their binoculars, and people might approach them and say what you're looking out for, and they're happy to engage and inspire other people about whales and dolphins. And then going even further than that, some volunteers will maybe write to their members of parliament on issues such as bycatch or whaling, um,
Mhm.
and also responding to consultations on marine protected areas. It's quite a big task to understand a government consultation and put in a full response, but some of our volunteers take that kind of like next step action to protect whales and dolphins, which I think is just so inspiring.
Yes, I agree. And also the problem of the debris, marine debris, and so people understand how important it is to keep our coastline
Mm-hmm.
clean, the fishing activity be more responsible. So it's all the network of responsibility that people can understand and take part on this. It's a really beautiful project.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah, it's cool.
So tell me about your most exciting experience.
My most exciting experience. Oh, that's a tricky one. There's been so many amazing kind of
You
cetacean
can tell me
sightings that I've
other one
had.
if you want.
So I think for me personally, because I spend so much time out on the coastline, I think for some of the larger species like orca, you often hear about them on social media before you've actually seen them. And I think sometimes when you're the first person to see something and you're absolutely not expecting it, are like those are like the exciting times where you have no idea what's around, and it's foggy and it's maybe not the nicest weather, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere there's this amazing sighting that you just weren't expecting. And that happened to me and my friend. We were up in Shetland in May, and in the Northern Isles in May in Scotland, it can be really great forecast. The weather forecast is amazing. You think it's going to be a lovely, sunny, very calm day, and then you wake up and it's blanket thick fog or like sea har, and you can't really see the sea at all, and it's quite depressing. So it was a
Sounds
really
like
foggy.
Norway.
Yeah, like Norway as well. Yeah, I think it's common problem in the north. Um, and yeah, so it was this foggy May day, and we went all the way up to Eshness Lighthouse, which is on the northwest of Shetland. And we could hardly see the sea. We did a quick 10-minute shore watch survey. We could only see maybe 2 or 3 kilometers out, so we got back in the car. It was cold because it was foggy, even though it's May, it can be freezing. Had a nice cup of tea to warm up, and then we thought, oh, should we go back out and do another survey? Probably not going to see anything, it's quite foggy. Oh, well, we're here anyway, let's go out and do another dedicated survey. And within the first minute, my friend Kat shouted, I think there's an orca. And she had never ever seen orca before. And they were literally a pod of orca right in front of us. We were quite high up on the cliff, but they were about 200 meters in front of us, and then down in the
Very
sea.
close.
And if we had sat in the car for an extra 10 minutes drinking our cups of tea, we would have missed them because they were literally right there. And then we watched them as they went round the coastline and round the corner. And that took them 10 minutes. They were traveling quite quickly. And to have that special experience with someone who has never seen orca before, and was like super, super excited. And she spotted them for herself. She saw them before I did. Was just really, really special. Um, and yeah, I hope everyone out there in the world has a
Yeah,
chance
I
of seeing these
can
amazing
imagine.
animals because
Yeah,
they're
they are.
incredible.
They are, they are. No, orca, when you see them and they come with this high black dorsal fin, like cutting the water, is amazing. Now I was in Svalbard, north of Svalbard, doing a scientific project. And I asked the guy who has been there for 10 years, the one, my partner on watch, and I asked him, how, have you seen an orca here? And he said, no, this area don't have orca. But it's written that they can occur. So
Hmm.
it was also bad weather, and suddenly I saw something black coming, and no, cannot be. And then and I screamed, and then the people on the deck below listened to me, and everybody was taking pictures and so happy. So they are beautiful animals, and I think also, as you said, this sometimes you are just in the right time, looking at the
Hmm.
right spot. Because maybe if you are looking to another area of your field view, you will not see them. So it's also
Yeah.
this feeling of be blessed for that moment,
Hmm.
for that
Yeah.
sighting. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think as well,
So
like 10 minutes after I've left, I'm like, oh, there's probably something out there now, and I'm just not looking. I'm not looking at the right time.
yeah, it's part of our job.
Yeah,
And about your
absolutely.
most challenging experience, what could you tell us?
Oh, most challenging experience. Probably the weather. I'm going to stick with we're in the north of Scotland, and yeah, I think it can be a real struggle sometimes when you're trying to get out there and survey, but either the sea state's really choppy or you're literally sat in your car and it's raining outside, so you don't want to get out, and the binoculars get very foggy when it's raining. I'm working on a citizen science project trying to motivate volunteers when the weather is really bad. That can be really difficult as
Mm-hmm.
well. But we have implemented a challenge to try and encourage people to get out a bit more in the winter when the weather's potentially not so good. And it's
Ah,
called the
that's
Winter Shore
nice.
Watch Challenge. So this is
Mm.
why I was at the European Cetacean Society conference in April, where we met, presenting a
Mm.
poster on our winter data. So I think volunteers are kind of there all year round and in their coastal communities and able to just get out on a really nice weather day, and to try and fill those kind of seasonal data gaps. So even though the weather can be challenging, and also the darkness in Scotland, as well as the
Mm.
weather. In Shetland in December, there's about six and a half hours of daylight. The sun comes up at 9 and then it sets again at around 3:30. So that can be
Stop.
challenging as well. So really encouraging people to get out when it is nice and when it is light outside, um, can help kind of overcome that challenge, I think. But yeah,
Mm.
I think the weather's the big one,
Yeah, it
that I
is.
struggle with.
It is for us. I am also working a volunteer project here in Lisbon. We go to a big tower close to the entrance of the river, and I am training the volunteers. And during the winter, we have very few volunteers also because it's cold, it's windy, it's not so easy to see the
Mm-hmm.
animals. We don't have so much data, but it looks like the dolphins are coming into the river more during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough, and I see myself. I have a really strong experience offshore, but for me, I don't have any problem with storms or waves, but the fog.
Yeah.
I hate fog. I feel claustrophobic with fog, and
Yeah.
it irritates me because you are there, you want to see something, and sometimes the sea is flat, but
Yeah.
then the
So
fog
calm.
comes, and then you cannot see anything. Also, I think it's a bit scary as we experienced here in Algarve, in south of Portugal. We were at sea and suddenly the fog came and we were in a rib boat, so a small boat
Hmm.
without all the equipment that we usually have on big vessels. So we didn't have a radar and we couldn't see anything.
Oh
And I
no.
felt, yes, and I felt like, oh my gosh, and now? And then we just need to stop the boat and wait to the
And wait for
fog
it
to
to
go.
clear, yeah.
Yes, because could be like there are a lot of dolphin watching boats and they are
Hmm.
very fast. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
not really
scary.
the best experience, but
I
it's
know.
part of being at sea. You need to know there are few things that you need to be like tough enough to
Yeah.
go
And I
through.
guess with winter watching as well, just to add that even though there might be less sightings of like more frequent sightings of species like our bottlenose dolphins in Scotland sometimes head a bit more offshore in the winter months, so they're not as coastal, similar to in Lisbon. Um, there are sometimes really fascinating things to see as well, even in the winter. So last winter here in Orkney, on New Year's Day, we had a pod of orca pass literally right past my house in Stromness, and then a month later there was a humpback whale that hung around for a few days. So even in the winter months,
Wow.
you can have some really, really
Yeah.
special encounters with marine mammals.
That is a good motivation to have a humpback whale around. Oh my gosh, I love humpback whale. Do
Yeah.
you have many there or is it occasionally only?
So it's kind of more occasional, and I think in Scotland the humpback whales kind of pass through on their migration route. So in some areas they
Mm.
might stick around for a couple of weeks or a couple of months as they kind of travel through Scotland, like past Scotland. There are specific kind of maybe hot spots that they are seen. So I know that in the Minch, which is the big deep trench of water between mainland Scotland and the Outer Hebrides on the west coast, this summer there have
Mm.
been loads of humpback sightings in the Minch. And then, yeah, we see them off Shetland, we see them in the Firth of Forth. I've seen one from Edinburgh before. So yeah, they can pop up wherever, but they're usually on a bit of a migration journey past
Okay.
Scotland. Yeah.
So, to keep this inspiring conversation going, I want to know more about you, and I have a very trick question. Do you have a favorite marine mammal? And why the
um,
species that you will choose?
Oh, it's very difficult, isn't it? There's so many amazing species to choose from. Hopefully, I've done some of the marine mammals that we see here in Scotland justice already by talking a little bit about some of the amazing species that we can see from the Scottish coastline. And I think I'd probably have to pick one that I see relatively often from Scotland, and that's the Risso's dolphin. Um,
Oh, yeah, I love
yeah,
them.
they're just so cool. And I think when you first see them, you maybe don't quite imagine them to be so big, and their fins are really big as well. So I think
Yeah.
that took me by surprise the first time. The first time I saw Rizzo's dolphins actually was such an incredible encounter. I think it's one of the only times I've cried while watching whales and dolphins. Um,
Oh.
and I was a residential volunteer at the Scottish Dolphin Centre, and we very luckily got to go to a site visit on the Outer Hebrides. There's an amazing lighthouse viewpoint called Chimpin Head, and it overlooks huge deep trench of water called the Minch. And we had been camping there for maybe 2 nights, and we hadn't seen any whales or dolphins. And this place is meant to be a mecca, like an amazing place to see them. And unfortunately, I think there was maybe some joint warrior exercises. So that's where the Navy have their kind of underwater sonar activities for a week or two in the summer. And it can mean that there aren't any whales and dolphins around because obviously the underwater
Mm-hmm.
disturbance, they kind of move away from the area. So we hadn't seen anything in a few days, and we were there to look for whales and dolphins. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there were these Risso's dolphins, and we managed to run down to the coastline, and the crystal clear waters in Scotland just allowed for us to watch them. You could see their entire bodies underneath the surface. Risso's dolphins are covered in this unique scarring, so probably caused by interactions with each other with their really sharp teeth, but also squids, some of the food that they eat. And they just look really, really gnarly. They're just covered in these scars. And they also just look like they've swam into a wall because they've got these big blunt foreheads, which I
Yeah.
think they look quite funny. So yeah, I think they probably have to be my favourite. We've done a little bit of research, additional research on Rizzle's dolphins up here in Orkney and Shetland. So we've been cataloguing individuals through photo ID. And I guess because of all
Mhm.
of that scars on their fins and bodies, they can be uniquely identified if
Oh,
you get
that's
a reasonable
nice.
picture.
Mm.
So I've built up a catalogue for Shetland and a catalogue for Orkney and the north coast of Scotland through community images, actually. So we've not really had the budget or funding to go out and do our own photo ID studies. And actually, this is where citizen science comes in again. People are out there taking pictures just opportunistically when they see dolphins. And we've been able to catalogue over 200 individuals around Orkney and Shetland. So,
Wow,
yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
a lot.
So I've
So
got a
it's
bit of a
kind of
soft
a
spot for
hot
Rizzle's
spot of
dolphins.
the. Yes,
Yeah.
amazing. I haven't seen Rhesus dolphins for a long time. I think the last time was there in Scotland. I was marine
Oh.
mammal observer, and
Mm-hmm.
then they came, a group of them, and then we have passive acoustic monitoring at the same time, and she managed to record them their sound,
Wow.
and it was amazing because in the spectrogram they have some spots. It's really special. I never
Mm-hmm.
seen
Really,
that
really
before.
cool.
It is, yeah, it's specific for the rhesus. And they are huge, as you
Yeah, they're
said.
so big.
They are so big, and they also have this like a smile face.
Yeah, yeah, they always
Yeah,
look like
very
they're smiling.
charismatic. I like your choice.
Yeah. And
And
there's oh, sorry.
no, continues.
I was just going to add that in Scotland, there's a possibility that Rizzo's dolphins might be mating with bottlenose dolphins. And there was one occasion where in Orkney I saw this pod of dolphins and I couldn't decide whether they were bottlenose dolphins. We don't get bottlenose dolphins that often here, and we get Rizzo's quite often. And I was toing and froing. I was like, oh yeah, that one's bottlenose. Oh wait, hold on, that one looks like a Rizzo's. And then I got some really decent pictures of the fins, and my colleague who is recording possible hybrids of Lewis immediately recognised the individuals. She's seen pictures of them before and said that there's one that is probably quite likely hybrid, half bottlenose dolphin, half Rizzo's dolphin.
Wow, that is very interesting. But how do they look like?
So they've got kind of features of both. So this one had, I actually didn't get a photograph of its beak, but it was hanging out with a group of all bottlenose dolphins. And I think my colleague had pictures of the beak of this animal before, and she was able to match the fin. And they might just have like a tiny little stubby beak rather than a proper bottlenose dolphin beak and quite a big bulbous forehead. And this one had quite a distinct tall fin, like a Rizzo's dolphin rather than a bottlenose. Um, and I think it's probably impossible to be
And
100% certain without genetic testing. But
wow, that's
yeah,
amazing. I'm just thinking, and about the body, how it is. It's more like because the Rhesus dolphin is more like straight, not so much
not so much
curved.
curved. Yeah, I
Yeah.
maybe didn't get as good enough of view. And actually, I didn't know until I got back to my computer and sent my colleague some pictures that she said, oh, actually, I think that's
Uh-huh.
probably a hybrid. Um,
Wow, that's
Whereas, yeah,
so
next time I'll be
amazing.
taking some
This is
videos
a
and stuff
new
as well.
hot topic in our field, all these
Yeah.
hybrid animals that
There's
people are
quite a few
getting
different
to know.
species, yeah, that
Mhm.
hybridize, isn't there? I think
Yeah,
other
like a
species of
fin
cetacean.
with minke as well, or fin,
Mm-hmm.
no, wrong. Fin with blue whales, they talk about.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
in the north of North Sea. Yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
so interesting.
wow. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
And about your feeling when you are at sea or when you are away of the sea, what the sea really represents for you.
Um, I think the sea is. yeah, it's so important. And I guess growing up, I grew up nowhere near the sea, and now I can't imagine living any kind of distance away from the sea. It's such an important part of my life. I love being on the water. I have a paddleboard, so I can't get out as much as I would like because the wind in Orkney is quite bad,
Mm.
quite strong. But I love being out on my paddleboard and just being on the water. Um, I love sometimes when you're maybe not in the best mood or you've had a bad day and it can be really, really wild outside, and just going for a walk along the cliffs and seeing the waves like crashing against the cliffs can really like connect you and your mood to how the ocean is. So I think it's just that kind of connection to the environment as a whole. And I think it's
Mhm.
quite inspiring in a way that we don't really know a lot about the sea. There's just so much that we can learn. So I think the sea means a lot to me, and I'm yeah maybe struggling to find the words to describe that, but in
Yeah,
so many
it's
different ways.
difficult.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yesterday I was at sea, and I was like, the last time I was at the sea was Thursday, and yesterday was Tuesday. And I talked with the skipper of the boat, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I was missing to be at sea. I need a boat for myself because
Yeah.
I am so used to be underwater swimming, or I also have a bodyboarding. I also have a paddleboarder, and
Hmm.
it's something. When I am in Lisbon, it's not so close to the sea. We have the Tagus River, but then I take my bike just to bicycle close to the river, and then I get to go to the beach. And I don't
Hmm.
know, I am. And then I said to her, I think I'm addicted to the ocean. It's something like, if I am
Yeah.
1 week away, I start to feel something is wrong. It's like a big part of me, and it's
Yeah.
getting more and more. It's something wrong. Oh, I mean, it's
No,
something
not at
good.
all. It's so special. It kind of, this is totally off topic, but it reminds me of I grew up on a farm, so my dad's a farmer, and when we used to go on holiday for a week, as children, he would miss his cows, and he would be
Uh-huh.
like, "Can't wait to get back to the farm." And I think I now have that feeling about the sea.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And about music, do you usually listen music when you are working, or is there any music you like to listen and that reminds you the sea, your work at sea?
Yeah, so I think sometimes I like to listen to music, but often sometimes if I'm walking by the coast, it's nice to just listen to the sea rather than have distractions,
Mm-hmm.
or the birds, or whatever it is. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of a specific song that reminds me of the sea, but there's um there's a band in Scotland, a post-rock band called Mogwai, and I just remember the first time I ever listened to them. I was on my paddleboard with my friend Katie, and we were up in Shetland, in this beautiful part of Shetland called Westerwick, and there's loads of big sea caves, there's huge sea stacks, and it was a beautiful, sunny, calm day, and we spent hours on our paddleboards just exploring the caves, sunbathing. The light shining through some of the sea caves was just really, really magical, and the whole time I had my speaker in my dry bag, and I just had a random Mogwai playlist on. And now, anytime I listen to Mogwai, it just takes me back to that moment of just being calm and being on the water and feeling that kind of magic inside of me. So while it's not a specific song, that's all I could think of that kind of reminds me of the
No,
sea.
but thank you. I went there. You described so well this
Yeah.
environment and sensation. Thank you for sharing. And Emma, before we finish our very nice conversation, how can people get to be in touch with you? There is the website or an email
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
So, if people are interested in learning a bit more about Shorewatch project, I've talked about Shorewatch quite a lot on our citizen science program. It's run by the charity Whale and Dolphin Conservation, which I'm sure many people have heard of already. But our website is www.wales.org/Shorewatch, and that takes you directly to the Shorewatch pages of the website. And we've got loads of information on there about the program. And then I guess if anyone's interested in connecting or asking me specific questions, I do have a LinkedIn profile. So maybe I don't know if you're able to link that in your podcast
Yes, we
episode. I
will
could send
do.
you the link. But
Cool.
if you just search Emma Steele, Whale Dolphin Conservation, I'm sure I would also pop up there.
Thank you. Yes, we will have
Yeah.
all this information in the episode presentation. And finally, is there anything else would you like to share? A message, advice, or something about would you like to add that we forgot to say?
I'm not sure. I just hope that in listening to this, people have maybe found out a bit more about Scotland, that they might not have realised that Scotland is an amazing place to see whales and dolphins from shore. You don't have to get on a boat. You can just, if you're lucky enough on a nice weather day, it's such a great place. And I think that's kind of up and coming. Like people are only just kind of realising that. And also just a huge shout out to anyone out there who does citizen science and contributes to any kind of data set, whether it's on marine mammals or plants or insects or anything. Like the data that we all collect together is really, really valuable for the common goal of trying to conserve and protect the environment. So we can all, do it together and keep collecting that data and fighting for the protection of the environment. So well done to everyone that does.
Wow, perfect. Thank you so much. It was
Well, thanks so much for
very
having me.
pleasant, this conversation. Thank you for navigating this far with us. Keep your eyes on ocean and ears open. Every 24, there is a new episode online.